Hello, my name is Kelsey Hall, and today I will discuss the childhood murders and the psychological reasons behind the actions of Mary Bell. I have an interest in psychology, so I chose Mary Bell because she has a severe psychological dysfunction, and I have completed my research about her victims in childhood. Did you know Mary Bell was the youngest murderer at only the age of 10 years old, and she is still alive and living a free life today? Mary committed a couple murders because of how she was treated in her childhood. She was born May 26, 1957. She lived in Scotswood area of Newcastle of England. She lived with her mother Betty Bell and her father was unknown. According to Aaron Kirkland, Serial Killer magazine, he mentions the childhood and the abuse that Betty suffered with for her mother. Her mother, Betty, was a prostitute and was never home. Betty attempted to kill Mary several times by overdosing and drowning. And she tried to make these attempts to look accidental. It was to believe that Betty suffered with Munchausen proxy syndrome, which means caregivers harm, suffocate, or poison their child for sympathy. BBC News indicated Mary Bell confessed that she was sexually abused by her mother and was forced to engage in sexual activities with men at as early as the age of 5. While other kids were playing around and enjoying their childhood, Mary was involved in several acts of violence. According to Aaron Kirkland, Serial Killer magazine, tells the first warning signs of Mary's violence. On May 11th, Mary and her good friend Norma were questioned about the 5-year-old boy named John who was found behind the shed severely injured and bleeding from the head. Another sign was a woman in Mary's neighborhood told the cops that her 7-year-old daughter Pauline and her 2 friends Cindy and Susan, who were 6, were almost strangled by either Mary or Norma. The first murder Mary convicted was a 4-year-old boy named Martin John. On May 25th, he was strangled and there was no signs of violence or foul play, so the cops thought it was an accident. After his death, several times, Mary visited Martin's mom and asked, "Is Martin there for me to play with him? Can I see him in his coffin? And do you miss him?" Martin's mom thought this was strange behavior from a 10-year-old, so she told the cops. But it wasn't until after the second murder when Mary was accused for Martin's death. On July 31st, 1968, Brian, who was only a 3-year-old, was found in the woods close by his house, strangled, puncture marks with scissors in his legs, chunks of hair cut off, and his genitals were scraped up. The police believe that after he died, she came back and carved an M in his stomach with a razor. Norma said that she pleaded with Mary to stop, but she refused. When Brian's coffin was brought out, a detective saw Mary standing at the end of the driveway laughing hysterically. Norma also said that Mary forced her to break in and vandalize a nursery home. That is where the police saw her notes of confession of killing of Martin and Brian. She was convicted of manslaughter on December 17, 1968. BBC News indicated she wasn't guilty of murder, but manslaughter of diminished responsibility. Psychiatrists described her as a psychopath. Isn't it odd that a 10-year-old is called a psychopath? Well, that's exactly what she was. She had no sympathy for others. According to Gitta Sereni's book, Cries Unheard, she tells about the conviction and the imprisonment of Mary Bell. She was sentenced to prison until noted by the court to be released. She was only in prison for 13 years and was a free woman at 23. 4 years later, she had a daughter. Many said that she didn't deserve that daughter, but the court allowed her to have it anyway. In 1980, she was granted identity protection for her and her daughter until her daughter turned 18. In 2003, she won a court battle which gave lifetime identity protection for both her daughter and herself. Until this day, no one knows where Mary Bell's and her daughter's whereabouts are. Today, I just discussed the childhood murders and the psychological reasons behind the actions of Mary Bell.